Megatron was well beyond furious to learn of the Energon theft. Then later that afternoon, Vortex disappeared. His chest could not reach him, and he knew nothing other than that he was, for the time, alive. It was all over the base about the forced bonding of 4 of the Stunticons. The Combaticons were frantic that would be facing similar fates. They, and many others, were refusing to leave their quarters. The still recovering Stunticons remained in medical and under the care of the Constructicons. None of them had taken the news of the bonding well, and none had any idea where Mirage had held them prisoner. They never regained consciousness once he'd taken them. Just getting his Decepticons to their duty shifts was taking Megatron's presence, door lock override cords, and violence to accomplish. The only normal behaving, and that was a subjective term, Decepticons were Starscream, Soundwave, and surprisingly, Bludgeon. Bludgeon simply said the Autobot had no reason for malice, and he believed he'd only taken the first time due to convenience. He had been drained, but otherwise unharmed, as had all others, so the Stunticons. Starscream huffed and walked the corridors as if the base belonged to him. It irritated Megatron, but given that Schrader's second-in-command was actually being a positive role model, he didn't say much about Starscream's arrogance. Soundwave, however, seemed to be restraining himself more than usual. His nervousness presented itself in little ways, such as the cassettes only being allowed out when the telepath was present. He's very protective of Rumble and Ravage, Laserbeak, all the others. Oh, so sweet. Megatron questioned his communications officer, but Soundwave was unable to pick up any trace of the Autobot or his captives. The scoring of security feeds only proved that Mirage had not tampered with them. How the spy was tricking the surveillance was still a complete mystery, one that frustrated Megatron, but not nearly as much as Mirage still being loose in his base did. So when Soundwave suddenly went stiff in his seat before shooting to his feet, Megatron was already demanding information. Unknown. One moment, Soundwave intoned, ordering Rumble back into his chest compartment. Megatron frowned, but followed the telepath out of the control room, rather than argue. There is a beacon. Level 2, F storage area. Oh, by the way, guys, in one episode, at least one episode, actually 2, Soundwave laughs. He actually laughs evilly, and it is the scariest fucking thing I have ever heard. It's like, I can't even imitate it. It's so creepy. You need to search for it. Go! No, not right now, because I'm reading, but once this is over, look for Soundwave's evil laugh. It's pretty awesome, actually. Anyway, there is the beacon, level 2, off storage area. Where? Megatron demanded once they reached the storage corridor. Soundwave's fingers ran along the wall, and he stopped abruptly. Here, he answered, mild confusion coloring the usually crisp monotone. Where? Behind the bulkhead. Megatron stormed to the nearest door and overrode the locks. There was nothing in the room, and it did not look as if the walls extended far enough. He looked between the room and where Soundwave still stood. His hands pressed to the wall and decided it definitely was not this room. He rushed to the next and repeated the process. How would a beacon be coming from within the wall? Megatron asked rhetorically. Soundwave did not waste any time and ordered the Constructicons to the location. Rip open the wall, Megatron ordered. Use caution. Soundwave warned and stepped well back and away. Megatron followed Telepath's example, but a shared look gave him no answers. 4 Constructicons showed up and set right to work, Scrapper talking as it progressed. No sign of any tampering with the wall from this side, maybe in the other rooms? Bonecrusher and Mixmaster went together to investigate one room then the next, with no results. They returned just as the last rivet was removed and the panels pulled away. There was a collective gasp that even Megatron took part in. Soundwave jerked back against the far wall, his visor shutting down completely for a moment. Hook swore. Spread eagle, chest armor completely missing, Motormaster hung suspended within the very wall. How? Megatron began, only to trail off. Hook and Scrapper moved close, both talking in hushed voices about how best to untangle Motormaster from the web of cabling and wires he was caught in. Primus! Hook flinched as Motormaster twitched and one optic opened and barely glowed online. Hook! Scrapper said and grabbed his Gestalt-mate's arm. Look at his spark. Both Constructicons ignored Motormaster's feeble struggle, kneeling to look closer. That can't be. He etched Motormaster's spark crystal? What? At least now we know why Mirage targeted the Stunticons, Scrapper said. He stood up straight and turned to face Megatron. The etching says, Rapist Ringleader. Looks like your guards took some blip. Starscream's cut off his Hook, threw an arm out, and dragged them both away from Motormaster. Hook reached forward and pulled the curious Mixmaster back as well. Hey, is that one of my... Mixmaster never got to finish his question. A small pop sounded and Motormaster screamed, loud and agonized. Soundwave jerked from his place against the wall and darted around the corner. Megatron didn't stop him, too horribly fascinated to look away, as neon green liquid suddenly filled Motormaster's spark crystal and began to dissolve it. The Stunticon jerked and writhed in his bonds as the acid destroyed both spark and containment. Holy slag! It's not just killing him. If the spark is destroyed, his soul is literally melting away. Good God, there would be nothing left. Hook! Scrapper! Longhall's frantic voice cut over the active comm channel the Constructicons left open. In the background, howls and screams could be heard. They're all freaking out! What the slag are we supposed to do? Stop, Bon, Crusher said, his voice subdued. Sedate them, Hook ordered. Just sedate them, we're on our way. Soundwave returned then and held out one hand. Megatron looked at Telepath with confusion. Surprised, he returned. A remote detonation device, Soundwave said. Abandoned and crushed. You caught the signal, Megatron surmised. Soundwave nodded. Mirage, not present. Prediction. Vortex will be returned next. Starscream or I will be taken. Possibly you. Megatron glared at the telepath and further crushed the remote in his hand. Unicron, take this! He switched on the base-wide comm channel. Find that Autobot! The one to bring him to me, dead or alive, may ask anything of me and I will grant it! Megatron closed the link and stormed away. And Starscream hurries to try and get leadership of Decepticons. Also, Motormaster Spark reading Rapist Ringleader might either be the most terrifying, most disturbing, or funniest damn thing I've seen all day. I mean, I can't decide if that's norm or not. I really can't. This whole story, man. Okay. The day after Motormaster was deactivated was a quiet one. It took time for the Constructicons to manage the 4 remaining Decepticons to get back to removing Motormaster from the wall. By then, half the army had made it to level 2 to look and see for themselves, and the half that didn't were shivering in their rooms and refusing to leave. Swindle, for whatever reason he deemed necessary, had decided to search Vortex's personal storage. The fact that nearly all the interrogator's tools and torture devices were missing was enough to compel Swindle to report his discovery. No one knew how long those items had been missing. 2 more days passed, and at the very lack of anything happening, seemed to wind the Decepticons even tighter. Megatron was the only one not rushing through the halls, scrambling his lock code by the cycle and peeking around corners before continuing on. Soundwave was downright jumpy, and Starscream's sneer had lost its convincing edge. The Seeker flinched, and his wings trembled at the slightest unexpected noise, and he rarely left his trainmate's sides during the day if it could be helped. The 3rd day began with Megatron striding hard and loud toward the control room. Starscream had to trot to keep up, but his fear kept his pride at bay, and he stayed as close to Megatron as he could. Starscream ran straight into Megatron's back, as the tyrant came to an abrupt halt just beside the control room door. He scrambled back, but Megatron didn't even growl. Daring to peek around his leader's side, Starscream leaned into the room. What he saw had him stumbling back in the opposite wall of the corridor. Oh dear. He was still there when Soundwave and the Constructicons appeared. Starscream's hand shot out and caught Soundwave's shoulder. Don't let your creation see, he whispered, then ran before he purged his tanks there in public. Okay, Starscream barfed and told Soundwave not to let the cassettes, I assume that's what he's referring to, see because it might damage their fragile minds. I'm scared. Hold me. Soundwave entered the control room cautiously and stopped short at the horrific sight. Okay. Here we go. The mech he knew to be Vortex, only due to the rotor blades binding his protoform to Megatron's throne, was stripped of all armor. The outer silicone layer of his face had been peeled away, leaving the fine metal mesh to show. It had to have been unbearably painful. The sensors and connections were there, raw, and coated in dried, flaking energon. Oh god. Visible throughout Vortex's body were his own clamps. Motor function wires were spliced and rerouted. The electro whip was painstakingly wound and woven all through Comaticon's internals. What are you waiting for? Megatron snapped. Get him out of there! Get him out of here! It's not that simple, Hook protested. Megatron started and stepped forward. Do you see these wires in that slagging cattle prod of his? It's connected to his... No! But it was too late. Megatron reached forward and tore Vortex from the throne. Soundwave twisted away, hands covering his audios, and low whine of sound escaping his vocalizer. Lightning crackled and sizzled all over Vortex, and Megatron's Combaticons relays connections blew, and there was nothing left to conduct the energon with the electro whip and cattle prod. Megatron dropped Vortex shell and fell to the ground, optics flickering, and the telltale white smoke of blown circuits rising from the gaps of his armor. Dumbass. Scrapper and Bone Crusher were carefully removing the rotors and wiring from Megatron's throne, but Hook stood over the leader and frowned down at him, hands daringly planted on his hips. It was connected to his spark chamber. We could have untangled him and likely saved his life had you been just a little patient. Megatron's vents heaved, but he glared right back up at Hook. Don't you give me that look! You were all put out that Megatron took out one of your gestalts. You just took out the second. It might have taken us time, but I would have gotten Vortex out of that alive. Hook spun around and stormed from the control room. Longhouse sighed and transformed, allowing Scavenger to gently place the fried husk that had once been Vortex in his truck bed, before driving off slow enough for his gestalt mate to walk beside him. So that's 2 dead. It was a few moments before Megatron recovered enough to stand, but when he did, even Soundwave hurried out his way as the leader stormed to the control room. Soundwave, Scrappers called. Who was on duty last night in here? It was another full day before both Misfire and Cloudstorm were found, unconscious, both unharmed outside the Constructicon lab. Oh god.